Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, where we discuss driving incremental business growth and other topics related to real estate, property management, and entrepreneurship. Now, to the show at hand.
Matt Zalk here. I'm the host of the Same Day Podcast, where I connect with top business experts and real estate leaders. Past guests include Caleb Caldwell of CCK Accounting, talking about the value and nuances of the 1031 like-kind exchange. Aaron Wiggum of New U here in Tulsa. Brooke Reuter talking about contract for deed versus lease-to-own properties. We also recently had Will Gilbrecht from Franklin Heating and Air in Northwest Arkansas on the pod, talking about the value of service in a business and growing a business from scratch. Today's episode is brought to you by Chris Lyle State Farm. Chris Lyle State Farm helps you protect your most precious assets and investments, whether it's your home and auto, investment rental properties, or other valuables. Call Chris Lyle State Farm for a quick and painless phone call to potentially save you double digits on all of your needs. I will say, I recently had a friend call Chris, and Chris was able to save my friend $8,000 on his, didn't even do his auto, but across his rental portfolio, which is pretty amazing. $8,000 a year. That's a real testimonial that happened early January. So if you want a quick quote, call his office, Chris Lyle's office at 918-878-7771 or visit diallyle.com. That's diallile.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Keyrenter Property Management. At Keyrenter Property Management, we are a full service management company, helping our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. We help our clients build wealth while taking the headache out of property management. David, you know better than most people that it's often hard to line up contractors to get a make-ready done in a reasonable amount of time after a tenant leaves the property. Contractors are busy, super busy. Their schedules are full, and it's hard to get in on them if you're just a mom-and-pop operator or some rental properties. Then the work seems to drag on forever, and all that leads to lost rental income. But at Keyrenter, we line up our dedicated vendors so that turns can happen super quickly, and we get more money back in the pockets of our owners. And that is why no matter what rental you have, a single family home, a condo, a townhome, an apartment, we've got the management solutions that you need. Go to keyrenterpmc.com or info@keyrenterpmc.com. Before we get started, I want to send a quick shout out to Nelson Zavo, who is a longtime colleague of ours here at Keyrenter. We often get the best vendors in our network from colleagues that have been in the industry for a while. So we're grateful for Nelson to have introduced us to David Yuen. And he's been a valuable part of our network for the last bunch of years. I mean, I think 3 or 4 years, David, we've been working together. That's a good tenure for us, considering we've only been in business for 5. Let me introduce David Yuen. He was born and raised in Tulsa, and he really enjoys doing pest control. He definitely didn't grow up thinking he was going to be killing bugs as a profession, but he enjoys being able to help others restore peace of mind and rid their homes of pests. David's been doing pest control for 9 years, and he learned his trade from a mentor that transitioned into pest control after being laid off from a software engineering career. He came from a long line of pest control folks in the family, so he trained David how to do his trade. David, welcome to the pod. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Matt.
We appreciate you being on. Tell us how you got started in pest control service.
So I started in 2015. Actually, I started before 2015. I was working with another gentleman, my mentor, doing commercial pest control in restaurants, which was a very hard thing to do, but it you learn either how to sink or swim, basically. And so we started doing pest control late at night, killing roaches, killing mice in restaurants. It's half the job is just finding where the bugs are at. And like he would say, getting the juice to where the bugs are at is how you get rid of the bugs. But it's hard to find them, and it takes time to build up the experience to know where the bugs are at. He retired in 2014. He sold his business, and at that time, either I was going to be out of a job or I decided to start my own pest control business. And so I started off just by doing the regular advertising. I was advertising on Craigslist. I was going door to door in the middle of winter. I remember going in January, going to businesses out north and just passing out my card wherever I could. And luckily, I had people call me and I just tried to do the best job that I could at every single business that I was doing pest control at. And so maybe about a year into it, I got a call from an apartment complex. They actually had 3 apartment complexes, and they asked me to give them a bid. I gave them a bid, and they decided to try me out. Luckily, that honestly changed the trajectory of my business and gave me some residual income. But it was very hard to treat all these apartments. Basically, I went from doing no apartments to doing over 500 apartments a month.
Wow.
And I'd never done apartments before, and I was doing it by myself. I had a maintenance guy, or sometimes a property manager would go with me, and we would go door to door. It would take, some of the complexes took 2 to 3 days to do them, and we would literally do them every day, 3 days in a row, 2 to 3 days in a row, going door to door. And in the beginning, a lot of these complexes, a lot of the apartments, I should say, had problems. That's why they called me. And so most of the problems you see, like in an apartment, are going to be roaches, mice, and bed bugs. And a lot of times you have issues with people just not cleaning, or their apartment is a mess. And so it just makes it really hard to do the job. And so you still got to do the best job that you can. And sometimes we would have to go back multiple times, or sometimes we would have to do a thing called a roach clean out, which is where we do like an intensive treatment, and we flush the roaches out basically, and we vacuum them up, and then we apply chemicals. And then even after that, we'll come back maybe 2 or 3 more times to resolve the issue completely. And so apart.
So let me just ask one question. Let me go deeper a little bit on this flush, because I know that when we do, regular routine treatment on a house, maybe monthly or quarterly, it's different than when there's a massive infestation and we need to really go deep. When you do the flush for roaches, how long does that generally take, and what's the kind of step-by-step procedure that goes into that?
So when you're flushing roaches out, most of the time roaches are going to be in the kitchen, the bathroom, and then the areas probably surrounding those areas. In the kitchen, we will pull out the fridge, the stove. Usually we have residents take out anything that might be in the cabinets, especially the bottom ones, but could also be in the top cabinets. And that way we can just get into the back of the cabinets really good. And we have a chemical it's an aerosol that we will get behind all the cracks and crevices, and we're basically flushing roaches out from their hiding spots. And then we have a HEPA vac, and we go around with a HEPA vac and vacuum out all the roaches. Sometimes that just flushing and vacuuming roaches will take an hour on a normal infestation, sometimes longer on a heavier infestation. Wow. Usually we'll just do that the first time, but if it's bad, sometimes when we come back the second time, sometimes the roaches, it seems like they might have even become more active because the chemicals will irritate them. And so you'll see them more, and we'll vacuum then. Doing this gets rid of probably, I would say, 60 to 75% of the roaches right away. And then you're left with maybe 10 to 25% of the roaches. And that's whenever we use the chemicals. And we use non-repellent chemicals because they won't scatter roaches. Some of the first chemicals that came out when they first started developing insecticides were all repellents, which just basically meant that you would spray an area, and if a roach got near it, they would be repelled by it and just go to a different area. But what happens when you spray repellents is you scatter roaches, and you send them scattering to all different types of places, which could be a box or electronics. A lot of times, roaches will go into the back of a microwave or a dishwasher. And in order to get them out of there, you have to flush them out of there or just replace those appliances. So it just makes it much harder to get rid of them. Nowadays, we use non-repellent insecticides because roaches or bugs won't even know that it's there. And they will just basically come out to areas that have been treated, and they'll walk over, they'll pick up the chemical on their feet, and they clean themselves. And then as they clean themselves, that's how they get the chemical inside. Usually the chemicals take about, I would say, 3 to 7 days for it to fully eliminate them, depending on how strong the roaches are or the bugs are, and if they've developed any type of resistance. And so after about 7 to 10 days after we've applied the chemicals, we usually come back and do a follow-up. And on this follow-up, we go back to all the areas that we've treated, and we're just checking them out. And a lot of times the roaches are completely gone. But we also leave glue boards behind in cabinets behind the fridge, and that'll let us know if roaches are still going through that area or if they're gone. In a normal infestation, I would say it takes 2 treatments to get rid of a normal infestation. For a heavier infestation, I would say sometimes 3 treatments. And if it's not a bad infestation, most of the times you can take care of it with maybe one treatment, and that'll completely eliminate all the roaches.
So it's a bit of an unsavory topic. Some of our listeners are going to get squeamish talking about all the bugs and pests. And the question that I have is, when we talk about roaches, are we talking about German roaches? Are we talking about American cockroaches? What others? I mean, there are wood roaches. There's all sorts of stuff. What are you generally seeing in terms of infestations in houses, in residential properties, apartments, I should say, are included in there, in terms of types of roaches? And what should tenants or owners be worried about, and what's not to be worried about?
So I would say 90% of a call that we get for roaches are for German roaches. Those are the roaches that you will typically see in the kitchen and the bathroom on the interior of your home. The other 10% would be wood roaches, American roaches, and they look like giant beetles, kind of. But usually they're just on the exterior of the home. And when people see them come inside, usually it's in a garage or after it's rained really hard and it's flooded, and sometimes they'll come through little cracks in the front or the back doors. Those types of roaches are scary, but you take care of them differently because you treat the exterior of the house, and also the garage, a basement, because that's where those roaches typically are.
So the infestation level is generally lower. They're meant to be outside, and they found their way inside after some event, but it's not like they're pervasive and persistent inside the house. But they're generally the ones that are also, like, they make you scream because they might be flying around the inside by accident. They might, a kid might find them and freak out. Is that right?
Yeah. A lot of times, they still scare me whenever I see them. I've had them crawling on me, and I'm just like, even though I see them every day, I'm still like, just get off me.
Good to know that reaction doesn't go away.
No, it doesn't, for sure. I check myself several times a day, make sure nothing's just crawled on me.
Let's go back for a second to your credentials. What does it take to be an owner of a pest control business, or somebody that's operating in pest control and actually doing the technician doing the service?
So to advertise to run a commercial pest control business in Oklahoma, you have to have a commercial operator's license, which just means that you're licensed to apply chemicals safely and also advertise your services. It means that you have to have a general liability insurance up to $1 million, I believe. You have to be recertified every 3 years, I believe, and you have to take continuing credits. Basically, I learned on hand as a service tech with my mentor, and I went with him maybe about a year or so, 10 months, I would say, and just learned from him. And after, you have to study a book. Basically, it's about the safety of applying pest control, of applying chemicals, and you have to learn about a process called IPM, which is Integrated Pest Management, which are ways of exterminating pests without using chemicals, using a vacuum, using ways to block them out of a house, those types of methods.
So I want to touch on some of the. I mean, there's extraction, and then there's whatever. What's the service called when you actually just keep them out? That blocking.
Exclusion.
Exclusion.
With exclusion, you're just finding all the little nooks and crannies where bugs are getting in, and either you're sealing it up with some caulking, or you're maybe replacing a door piece trim, or sometimes it's a garage door. On the corner of garage doors, I know that weather stripping sometimes will curl up, and mice will get in through that area. So just replacing that and blocking that will stop the mice from getting into your garage.
Yeah, I guess the exclusion part is really more for rodents, right? I mean, they're the ones that are gnawing holes and things and getting in through small openings in various parts of the exterior portion of a house. Tell us a little bit about the chemical side. What are the different chemicals that you use for various services? And people are often worried about those chemicals in terms of the toxicity to humans. Can you touch on that just a little bit?
Sure. So most of the chemicals from the last 10 years, I would say, are much safer than the chemicals that were first invented in the 50s. The classic chemicals from the past were called organophosphates and carbamates, which were chemicals that once you applied them, let's say to the exterior of your home, they would last for 5 to 10 years. And they call that persistence. Basically, it just means that the chemical will not evaporate or lose its potency for a very long time. What people didn't know was those chemicals did cause cancers and things like that. So in the late 80s, I believe, they started developing a new class of chemicals, which were not organophosphates and carbonates. And most chemicals will evaporate after 60 to 90 days. And they did that on purpose so that chemicals would not affect people, pets, and even water and streams, and basically cause cancer. And so the chemicals are very safe nowadays. The label on insecticides are very specific in how you apply it. For example, there's interior chemicals that you might only be able to use inside a cabinet if there's no food in it. And all the chemicals that we use are very safe. We use chemicals like baits. Baits have almost no smell. They're very safe to apply. And basically, we apply those in very small amounts, like in a kitchen cabinet. And the only thing it's going to affect are the roaches. It won't affect people or animals. The chemicals that we spray are non-repellents most of the time, and they're very safe. They're labeled to be used in a kitchen, in a bathroom, almost anywhere that you would want to in a house. And most of those chemicals will evaporate after 90 days, I would say.
Got it. Interesting. You mentioned that restaurants are very hard to treat in commercial operations. Uh, Tell us a little bit about why restaurants are so challenging. I think we'll try to keep it short because most of our listeners aren't into the restaurant business, I would suspect. But it was interesting to me because it's a little microcosm for, your house. It's applicable to the house space as well.
So a restaurant, imagine it like a little city for bugs, because there's always going to be a water source. There's always going to be some type of food. Like, it's just running a restaurant. People are going to drop food.
Right.
Little food scraps are going to be in every little place. And so that just means that roaches or bugs have a constant food source, a water source, and then a place to hide. And those are the three things that they need to survive and to thrive. And so, yeah, it makes restaurants do their best to clean, but I'm sure hours get long, and then employees don't clean the best that they can, and bugs can start to build up. Plus, they're always getting deliveries, and people are always coming in and out of a kitchen, and so that also gives bugs a way in
Right.
into the restaurant.
You've touched on roaches a little bit. You've touched on mice a little bit. We don't see a tremendous amount of bed bug activity in single family residences, but certainly in apartments, we see more of that. What are the options for treating bed bugs?
So there's chemical treatments, and then there's heat treatments. Um, Both are good and both are effective. I do chemical treatments because honestly, they're more affordable. A chemical treatment can run you anywhere from, I would say, 400 to on up, probably 400 to $1,000. While a heat treatment usually starts at, I would say, 1,200 on up. And so I've been doing chemical treatments for all these years, for the past 9 years, and have been successful in getting rid of bed bugs every single time. It's just the way that you do it. Basically, I go to where the bed bugs are, and I'll physically get them out with a flusher and a vacuum, and then we apply very specific chemicals to areas where bed bugs are at. And after we do that, we come back in 14 days, and we do a follow-up inspection and spot treat any areas that we need to treat.
Why are they known for being so difficult to treat? Though it seems like that's a pretty straightforward treatment, and yet, they move with people, they move seemingly through walls, to different apartments. What makes them so difficult to treat?
Bed bugs are very resistant to chemicals. Insects will have been growing a resistance since we people have been using insecticides. Um, if you spray an insecticide and it doesn't kill a roach or a bed bug, they can grow stronger and actually kind of develop like an armor against it. And so the chemicals that you use against them might not be effective as it was. And so they've had to develop new chemicals, or also rotate your insecticides to treat for them. I would say bed bugs hide very good. They say bed bugs are cryptic in nature, which just means that they hide most of the time in the dark. They're attracted to dark colors. They hide in places that you're normally not going to see them, and people just don't know that they're there until they might see one. They might have actually gotten bites, but they don't know what was biting them. So a lot of times they'll think maybe it was a mosquito bite, maybe it was just something else. And then one day they'll see a bed bug crawling, usually on their sheets, and then they realize like, oh my God, that was a bed bug right there, and start to look. And then by then, a lot of times the bed bugs have like a small infestation, and then they realize like, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah. Tenants often say, we don't manage that many apartments anymore. We don't manage that many Class C apartments anymore. But I remember when we did manage more of them, tenants would bring in bed bugs and say that they got them from say that they got them from uh, the complex. So they'd say, I didn't bring those with me. You know, my couch didn't have any bed bugs prior to me coming to this apartment complex. How can you tell whether someone brought the bed bugs with them or whether they, you know, started getting bed bugs when they moved into an apartment complex? And obviously that will dictate to us whether we charge the tenant for the service and save the owner the money or bill it to the owner.
A lot of times you can tell if bed bugs have been in there by looking on looking on the furniture, or looking on the bed. If the bed bugs have been there already for a while, you're going to see those markings, like those little blood spots or little black spots on usually like a sheet or a pillowcase. And so once we see that, we know that bed bugs have already been there probably at least like a month, especially if you see like bed bug shells or eggs, things like that. You know that they've been there for a while. So sometimes when people say that the bed bugs just started or they weren't here, we can tell right away like they've been here for 30 days. And they've already been here. A lot of times, if bed bugs are hiding in a vacant unit, let's say, we definitely check underneath the trims and all the general places bed bugs would hide, especially like if it's like a wood floor, we definitely check. We look at power outlets, things like that to see if bed bugs have been there before, basically, because they will always leave behind those little markings, which is just evidence of them being there.
Um, Kind of on that in that same vein, we generally say to our residents that move into a new property, you've got 7 days to tell us if there's a pest control issue, and after that, we're going to charge you for the pest control service because we're going to assume that you brought them there or that they came after you arrived, and that the service of pest control is a function that you need to pay for, is a service that you need to pay for. Is that the right approach or is that the wrong approach?
I think that's the right approach right there, because if roaches are there, usually you're going to see them almost right away come out when as people start putting things into their kitchen or into the cabinets. If you see if there's a mice problem, usually you're going to see some type of droppings or you're going to hear something right away because those mice are going to be active at night. And if it's bed bugs, if it's especially in a vacant house, if someone moves in, usually bed bugs start to come out. I've seen them come out within the first hour. Literally, you'll know most of the times if bed bugs are there. So I think 7 to 10 days is a good amount of time to tell if there's a bug problem or not.
What is the bed bug attracted to? I've heard that it's like carbon dioxide that we're off gassing as humans. Is that right?
It's basically the breath that you exhale. That's what they are attracted to. They actually say that bed bugs can't see very well. I'm not sure how they know that, but they say they can't see very well, and their strongest sense is their sense of smell. And so when they smell the CO2 from us breathing, that's where they know where to home into, and that's how they find a human source, basically.
Got it. So as soon as if a house is vacant and they're going into some period of prolonged I don't know, starvation or whatever it is, they haven't fed in a while. As soon as they get that sense of carbon dioxide, they're going to come out immediately because they want to feed, more or less.
Exactly. Yeah. Bed bugs want to feed basically every 3 to 5 days. So if they haven't ate in a while and someone moves in, they're coming out.
Got it. Let's switch subjects a little bit. Tell me a little bit about the pricing of or for services that you offer. I don't need to know specifics like dollar amounts because if somebody watches this in a year, prices could have changed. But like, why do you price roaches one way? Why do you price extraction or exclusion of a rodent problem one way? Why do you price bed bugs one way?
A lot of it has to do with the difficulty of the job. For example, if somebody calls and it's just a regular infestation for roaches, like maybe they see one or two roaches in a day, that we know that job is not going to be as hard as a job that, let's say, the roaches have been there for 3 or 4 months, and they're in all the cabinets, and they're in bedrooms and in many places that we basically have to seek out and find. So that job is going to take much longer, more chemical, and just be that much harder to do. Plus, on a heavier infestation of roaches, we have to do a follow up after 14 days. And if the infestation was normal, usually we can take care of that by the first follow up. And if the infestation was harder, sometimes it will just be a little bit more expensive because we have to come back out there for a follow up. For bed bugs, usually we do 2 treatments, and a normal infestation we can get rid of them in 2 treatments. But there have been times that bed bugs are just in every room, in many different places, and they're scattered, and it takes 3 treatments or more. And so it's basically just the difficulty and how much time it takes to do the job, basically. We also do exterior treatments, like a general pest treatment for ants, and like general pests on the outside. And usually that's just a one-time treatment, and it can take care of the bugs for about 3 months usually on the exterior, and you won't have any problems after that.
Why would we send a pest control expert to do the exclusion rather than just a maintenance guy to run by and, add caulking and kind of fill up small holes and board up places where rodents might get in?
Usually to do like an exclusion, it's just finding where the bugs are at. A lot of times they're just in odd places. Maybe we'll see a sign of just evidence of like roaches being here. Sometimes they're behind, like on the top of a door trim, or they're in a box, or sometimes like in a microwave or something like that. And if you don't treat that area or seal them out of that area, then they're gonna just they're just gonna keep infesting that area, and they're gonna keep coming out, basically.
So it's really the expertise. I mean, you're paying for the expertise associated with the exclusion rather than the actual caulking, for example.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it just, like, if it's something that we can't handle, then it might even be better. Like if it's like what do you call it? The door trim, not the garage door sealer at the
Yeah.
bottom. Like we don't do that. But just doing something like that with a regular carpenter, that does save a lot of time and cost right there.
What's the difference between servicing a vacant home and an occupied home?
A vacant home is much easier to treat because we can get through all the rooms, inspect them very thoroughly, and then treat everything, allow chemicals to dry. It just allows us to do a very thorough job, just easier. When a home is occupied, there might be a lot of things like in a cabinet. Let's say they're calling for roaches. There might be a lot of food in cabinets, or the refrigerator might be filled up. The stove might have food and things underneath where you lift up for the burners. And so we have to check all those places to just make sure that roaches or bugs aren't in there, and so it's just much harder to treat basically.
What what do you think is the main difference between your operation and a big box pest control outfitter?
Um, we I'm just a single owner operator, and so I have a lower overhead. I don't have three or four techs that are and doing the marketing, things like that. And so I try to uh, give people a better price, to be more competitive, and to do honestly try to do a better job. When I meet somebody, a new client, um, I'm trying to do the best job that I can and solve their problem because I know my reputation is on the line basically. So I try to do a better job at a better price basically.
Is it unfair to characterize a technician that works for a big box pest control outfitter to as, somebody that's just looking for a paycheck and they go and they do their job as easily as possible and they don't really care whether they're going to get called back or they're going to get, they're going to do a less good job? Is that fair or is that mischaracterizing kind of how they work?
No, I would say, um, just as a business owner, I'm trying to grow my business, and so I'm trying to do the best job that I can every single time because I'm trying to build a lifelong customer, basically. Maybe a technician, not to say that they would do a bad job, but maybe they just don't have the same motivation. Um, Maybe I know whenever I took my test at OSU, the test to get your license to do pest control, basically, I had studied for a long time. I studied for basically about a year just to take that test. While I noticed some of these other service techs, they might have just got hired on a couple weeks before, and so they just didn't have the same knowledge or experience. Um, and I'm not just saying they were looking for a paycheck, but um, maybe they just hadn't had as much invested into it.
Right. What would you say is the hardest part of your job?
Um, sometimes, sometimes dealing with situations where people have roaches, but there's also like a lot of food or sources where bugs have like a constant flow of food or water, and I know I know once I do the job, the people aren't going to change their habits.
Right.
So it's hard to do the job sometimes, but I just try to do the best job that I can, honestly. So sometimes that can get hard. Um, it just makes it more challenging, honestly.
So, what is your ideal client?
Um, Ideal client would be like if they called me for a pest issue, and they were working with me to solve the pest issues, because a lot of times people think that pest control is just applying chemicals and the bugs will go away. But a lot of times there's other conditions that
Right.
are either attracting the bugs or they're not keeping them out. And so um, just a client that understands that and is working with me basically. Sometimes it might just be excluding like pests, or maybe it's just cleaning up like your kitchen. So that would be my ideal client, just somebody that works with me, I would say.
Do you walk into a house ever and see a can of Raid or whatever else and just think, "Oh my God," like how does that?
All the time.
So, what's the problem with using something that you get over at Home Depot to try to get rid of your pests?
So the what's funny is the people that make Raid are some of the same people that make the chemicals that I buy. But there is a big difference right there. Raid is like a contact killer and will only really, it says on the can that it's going to work for 365 days, but just knowing that commercial chemicals usually last about 90 days, when I see the label like that, like I know that that's just marketing. And I know that people aren't, they're just using it to pacify. Like a can of Raid isn't just going to make the roaches go away if you spray every cabinet. I know that you really have to get in there and get the roaches out of there to really solve that problem.
Does it make your job more difficult though if they've been using something like Raid to a contact killer to get rid of the bugs?
Yeah. Raid is a repellent, and so if I baited a cabinet, bait is what the roaches are attracted to, and they're going to eat. And if a tenant has sprayed Raid over in a cabinet trying to kill the roaches, a lot of times that will contaminate the bait, and the roaches basically won't eat that bait, so it makes it ineffective. And so yeah, that definitely makes it harder. I see Raid in almost everybody's house, I think.
Wow. Yeah, so it's actually working against the tenant. They're trying to do something to help dissipate the roaches, I guess, but it actually works against the long-term solution of having them eat the bait and actually die. What's the hardest part about working with a property management company like us?
Man, you guys are great to work with, honestly. Basically, I get a work order from you guys. I call the tenant. I schedule a time to go out and do the job. I do my job, and I would say most of them are in homes, and that does make my job easier because in apartments, there's just other factors that make the job harder. And so homes, usually once you get rid of a bug problem, usually it won't come back, like if it's roaches or bed bugs or ants, something like that. It's just, man, it's been great working with you guys, honestly. Scheduling is easy. It's definitely a lot easier than dealing with many property managers at an apartment complex with different tenants calling in all the time. That can just be more difficult for sure.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. I'm glad you enjoy working with Keyrenter. It's a mutual feeling, I'd say, for sure. If we can ever do anything better, don't hesitate to let us know. We're always trying to improve our process.
Man, I think you guys are doing great. I've seen you guys grow a lot. You guys are doing a good job.
I appreciate it.
I like working with you guys.
David Yuen was born and raised in Tulsa, and he enjoys doing pest control. This might have been, as I said, an unsavory episode, hearing about all the pests that could be lurking behind plate covers, electrical switches, and under your cabinets. But we hope that you learned something. David didn't grow up thinking about killing bugs, but he enjoys being able to help people restore peace of mind and get rid of their pests. David, thank you for being on the pod.
Hey, thank you, Matt. Appreciate you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Same Day Podcast. Tune in to a new show each week and be sure to subscribe to get future episodes.